Okay, inflation. What is that exactly? Well, there are three types of economies. There's inflation, there's stagflation, where it stays level, and there's deflation, where things drop in value. Now, if you have certain types of economies, like what we're experiencing right now, what that means is that our dollar value, because of our economy, is so strong that it makes it very difficult for other countries to come here and buy our stuff. So you're seeing a lot of very cheap motorcycles on my feed. Why is that? Well, in the used motorcycle world, of which I've been involved with for 42 years, it involves buying a motorcycle at a wholesale price of what you hope is a wholesale price, and then putting a pinch on it and selling it for a little more money. Well, who are the buyers? Predominantly, historically, not Americans. 95% of these motorcycle business goes overseas. So the problem is, by the time they convert our money to American dollars and pay the shipping, they can't make any money on it because our money's so expensive to the comparison with their dollars. Now, why is that? We had a little thing called a pandemic. It was worldwide. It wasn't just on your TV. It actually happened. It was all around the world, and every country was affected, which resulted in broken supply lines, which resulted in inflation. Okay, we're not the only ones. You know, we are the leader of the free world until we had a moron called Donald J. Trump in office, who could have stopped the whole thing by being a man instead of a pussy and trying to politicize the pandemic, which is impossible. Democratic hoax, anybody remember that stupidity? He had the vaccine in his hands. He was told it was deadly. He was told you breathe the air and get sick. All he had to do was say, we got the vaccine, we're going into overdrive tomorrow, we're going to make sure the world has our vaccine, we'll have it in production in a month. We're printing the money tomorrow to make it happen. Everybody wear masks until then. Now what did he do is he gets in office and gets rid of the pandemic response team put in place by Obama because he doesn't like black people, he hates Obama, and because he doesn't believe in science. All right, the same science I'm using to talk to you through this little box, going up into a satellite down into your little box. He doesn't believe in science. Wow, that's rough. Doesn't believe in science, the science that he uses to speak into a microphone and talk to all his supporters. He doesn't believe in science. Oh, God, how can you be this stupid? But they are. So, anyhow, inflation. In Los Angeles, or any wealthy area, houses since 2020 have 3 times themselves in value. $1 million house is now $3 million, and so forth. Well, that's not inflation, right? Inflation is this. I went down to buy some eggs before the pandemic hit. A flat of eggs was $7.50 at Sam's. Busted supply lines caused by the lockdowns made that flat of eggs go up to as much as $30 a flat at Walmart. $30. For eggs I was just buying for $7.50. Well, now we have our supply lines back. Eggs are now $9. So that's $1.50 of inflation, okay? Not $30. $30 is busted supply lines. Well, if inflation was 300%, everything, not that house, would be at 300%. 300%. Gas would be $15 a gallon, okay? That little flat of eggs would still be $30, all right? Your quart of milk for, what is it, $3, $5, whatever it is, 3 times that. 3 times everything. Your $25,000 car would be 75 grand, all right? So it's not inflation that's raised the house prices. What is it? It's called a good economy and people are spending the money. Supply and demand. If the supply is over here and people want it over here, it raises the prices. I'll give you an example. In the 1986, Harley Davidson came out with a little motorcycle called the Heritage. It looked like an old bike, except it had an Evo motor that didn't break down, ran beautiful, electric start, looked like an old bike. Several things happened. I started selling bikes in Hollywood. They ended up in videos, rock music videos, and the world went crazy. Oh my God, I can look like an old biker and have this modern bike that doesn't break down. We called them yuppies. So Harley Davidson went in overdrive for a good 10 plus years, all the way to the mid 2000s. It was a 3-year wait. 3-year wait and a $10,000 premium to get a Harley Davidson. Supply and demand. That's not inflation, that's supply and demand. Harley was making 300,000 units a year and couldn't supply it enough for the demand. And it raised the prices. There's not enough houses to go around for people to buy. Now, why is that? In large part because of two things. All the homes that got repossessed in 2008, the banks are still sitting on. They're still empty. They never get put back on the market. That is incredibly stupid. We have vacant office buildings all around this country because people are shopping online more and more and more, which is gradually eliminating the brick and mortar store. And those commercial office buildings are not being converted to apartments. Another stupidity. And then we allow people, especially foreign agents, to come here and buy up homes for investment purposes. Most of the homes are owned by investment vehicles, so they can rent them. So you have a huge lack of available properties that the individual can buy and own himself. Supply and demand. And it raises prices because people are spending money because they're making more bank than ever. We have an amazing economy. We have 3.5% unemployment, which hasn't been seen since the 60s. We haven't had an economy this robust since post-World War II. Well, post-World War II, prices doubled overnight. I mean, like that. Boom. Supply chain shortages. Why? Because we had a war. It's all the local supply trips were all gone for 5 years. You couldn't buy anything for 5 years unless you had a ration stamp. And people had saved up all this money and all this pent-up urge to spend their money because they couldn't buy anything in the Great Depression because they didn't have any money. And all of a sudden they got all this money that they've been saving for years, and they went out and started spending it. So Harley, the largest Harley production in history at this time, till immediately past World War II, was 1913. They made 25,000 units. That was the largest Harley production in history at that point. Now in 1913, it was incredibly expensive to buy a car. And then here comes the Model T in 1914. And all of a sudden the average guy can afford a car. And bloated the motorcycle market, right? So supply and demand, supply and demand. Now we got post-World War II, everybody's got all this money, and the motorcycle is $435 retail prior to the war is all of a sudden $750. Just like that, overnight. Boom. And people bought them up. They had a production of over 14,000 Harley knuckleheads, just knuckleheads, in 47, just knuckleheads. Nearly 14,000 panheads in 49, and again in 50. Boom, post-war boom. All of a sudden they're building mini-track homes everywhere. It created the middle class. There was no middle class in this country until after the war. It created the middle class. Now everybody thinks they're entitled to be a middle class person. No, we all want what we want. But the reality is, until after World War II, there was no middle class. There was low class, There was people living dirt poor, and there was the ultra wealthy. There was no middle class. Didn't exist. Did not exist. So again, we have inflation. Yes, we do. It is largely under control due to the policies of one Joe Biden. We have less inflation in this country than every other country in the world. We have a better economy than any other country in the world because of the policies of Joe Biden. Why do we have such inflation? Again, Trump blew up the economy. He took a good Obama economy and he completely fucking destroyed it. And most of that destruction was his utterly stupid, moronic response to the pandemic. And every time you go, hey, Mr. Trump, wah, wah, woo, and he was running off from the cameras, I take no responsibility for anything. Is that who you want as president again? What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh, that's right. He allows you to hate on the colored people. The people with their racism will gladly burn the world to ashes as long as they can hate. That's all they care about is their hate. It's the most important thing in the world to them. And somehow they think they're superior. Yeah, okay, sure you are. So, that's my little bit on inflation. Right? Houses did not 3 times themselves for inflation. They 3 times themselves because of a rockin' fucking smoking economy and supply and demand. That's the reality of it. See you guys.